Hey everybody, it's Bruce here from WaterBear. This channel is always about helping you on your journey as a musician, getting you to where you want to be. Now my career goes all the way back to the pre-digital age, right the way through to now, where we do things a bit differently, so we can take the best of both, combine it and move forward. Like and subscribe if you want to be kept in the loop. So the topic of conversation today is how are we going to budget for making an album in 2020 and how much are we going to spend? Well, the answer to that is probably somewhere between nothing, and it is entirely possible to make a truly great album for no money, all the way to perhaps 30,000 quid. Now that's a lot of money in 2020. But in historical terms, it's peanuts. My album in 1993 that ended up being #1, it was called Jam. We probably spent 10 times that amount. We would have spent 30,000 quid on the preliminary demos before we even started the record. But back then, we were selling CDs for 20 quid and manufacturing them for 25p, so there's huge margins. We don't have that today, hence much smaller budgets and different approaches to monetizing your music. So let's pause for a minute. There's a really important point here. You may be closer than you think to making a career-defining record. And here's why. Recording an album, the costly bit, is secondary to the important bits, which is songwriting, pre-production. That's where the record's really made, and both those two things are entirely free. Tip #1, very simple, decide on the overall spend. We are talking about making the record. Promotion, marketing, campaign, we'll deal with it in another video. So right now, let's just get this record made. So let's break this down into 3 examples. What do you do if you've literally got nothing to work with? Well, actually, you're in a strong position because some of the greatest music ever produced has been produced in difficult circumstances. And very often the things that restrict your art are the thing that makes it great. Diamonds are forged under extreme heat and pressure, and music is exactly like that. So the stages we've got are the writing, the pre-production, the recording, mixing and mastering. All this stuff can be done at home. It can be done on GarageBand. You can blag, borrow mics. You can just get the thing done. The only thing that's really restricting you is your own creativity and imagination. If those songs are great, the record will be great. Can it be done for free? It absolutely can. So if all the band members have chipped in a little bit and we've actually got a little tiny bit of budget, say 500 quid to 1,000 quid, and we've basically got a homemade album, there's a couple of options to kind of upgrade a little bit. So this is now about prioritizing. Obviously with a few hundred quid, you can't do everything, so you've got to think what's gonna make the biggest difference. And arguably, I would say, think about the mixing, because you've got an opportunity to take a home-produced album and give it to someone with a bit more gear and a bit more experience and just step it up at the mix stage, and that could make a fundamental difference to the quality of the record. And we're talking hundreds of pounds, not thousands. And when you're working with these limited budgets, you've got to pick battles that you can win. So there's no point spreading the whole thing thinly across the whole project. Take that few hundred quid and dump it somewhere it'll really count, probably the mixing. What happens if you've got a bit more money? Say a couple of the band members have actually got day jobs as well and saved up £2,000 or £3,000, and we're going for that 1,000 to 3,000 bracket. Again, it's not a huge budget here, so we've got to make it count. What's the best way to spend that money? So with this extra little bit of budget, you've got 2 choices really, depends on the type of record that you're making. So if it's a live-based indie or rock record, probably the way you record the drums is going to make the most difference. And if it's a more pop-orientated project or a more electronic-based project, probably put that budget into the mix. Specifically, I'm talking about tracking drums in a really good studio, and this is what you're paying for. You're paying for a really good sounding room, good mic selection, good desk, some hardware, and an experienced engineer. And if you also get a bit of bass, rhythm guitars, whatever, that's a bonus. Let's concentrate on making these drums great. And because we've planned this album carefully before we've even started the recording process, that means we don't need that much time in the studio, which also means that this brings within your budget, within your grasp, some of the world's best studios. So let's take Rockfield in Wales, for example, where albums by Queen, Oasis, Royal Blood have been created. There's nothing to stop you being in a studio at that level. At this budget, £2,000 or £3,000, you can afford it to track your drums. And lastly, what do we do if money is no object and we've got an unlimited budget? Well, actually, realistically, in 2020, you don't get much more for your money once you go beyond that 30 grand point, because you can work with the world's best producers, the world's best engineers, in the world's best studios for very affordable prices these days. So how do you find the right producer and the right engineer? It's really simple. You do your research, you Google their contact details, and you ring them up and you do a deal. You should be expected to pay something between 200 or 300 quid for an experienced current producer who is selling records right now. Tip number 2, allocate and cap all the individual budgets. So we're talking about songwriting and pre-production, we're talking about bringing in a producer, we're talking about the recording process, how many days, what sort of studio, where. We're also going to be looking at mixing and also mastering. That's it, job done. It's really important to cap those budgets, and the reason is recording an album is an open-ended process and budget control can go out the window very quickly. And to illustrate that point, here's a simple budget that I've done. This is probably the way I'd go about recording a rock album in 2020. Tip number 3, budget your time. In exactly the same way that we've got a plan for how we spend our money, we've got a plan for how we spend our time, because at the end of the day, time is money. So here's the thing, most artists think that the day they start making the record is the day they set foot in the studio. Not so. It's actually before that, when you go into rehearsal room and you take those songs and you start to arrange them. And the great thing about that pre-production phase is it's free. So you've got pre-production, you've got your recording, you've got your mixing, you've got your mastering. I think a logical way around would be spend a long time, a month, 6 weeks, on getting the songs and the arrangements right. Get that record recorded quickly in 10 days, get it mixed in 5 or 6 days, send it off for mastering 1 day, job done, 2 months. Thank you for listening, everybody. I've been Bruce, you've been brilliant. Like and subscribe if you want more videos like this week in, week out. And I'm going to give you a bonus tip now. When you send your mix off to the mix engineer, make sure your files are labelled, because otherwise it takes longer and costs you more money.